nice to be able to say, well, I know this mimer. I learned it, I know it, I can answer the questions, right? That's the idea. Because you're not going to be walking around with every mimer you ever learned in your pocket, so you can look it up, okay? Okay, so I put it on the Hasidus group and on the Gemara group. So that should cover most. Shaya, you're exempt from the test for obvious reasons. Okay, we're going to start a new mimer tomorrow morning. We're going to finish this mimer today. And then you'll have time, hopefully you'll have time to, do some of the questions if you want. Please write so that I can read it. All right, okay? I actually had a nice piece of paper that had the questions and had lines underneath the questions where you could write the answer, which also gave you a hint as to how long the answer should be. Right? Okay. Okay, we're on the last page 118. And the Rebbe has explained the inyan of Shtus de Kedusha. The prototype for Shtus de Kedusha was Rav Shmuel Bar Rav Yitzchak at the Chasna, right? He used to juggle the Hadassim, and Rav Zeder was upset. Gemara in Ksuvas, Rav Zeder was upset. And then at Rav Shmuel Bar Yitzchak's Levaya, so there was a miracle and there was a fire separating his body from everybody at the Levaya, at the funeral. And Rav Zera understood that was in the merit of his Shtus de Kedusha at the time of the Chasna, because the Chasna is such an important thing. Eish Yud, Eish K, so that fire represented the Shechina that comes to rest between husband and wife when they get along. The Eish of Yud and the Eish of K, right? Ish v'Isha. And then, after explaining that, the Rebbe then explains the inyan of Nevuah, which is Shtus de Kedusha, the fact that the Novi reaches a state completely l'mayla mitam v'das, and that's why he has to throw off his garments of Seichel and Mides, his intellect and his emotions in Ruchnias, but also literally the Nevi'im used to throw off their clothes because the clothes were representative of a sense of self, a sense of self-awareness. We started wearing clothes after Chet Eitzadas, right? That which gave us the appreciation of not only Tov, but also the opposite of Tov. Okay? So that's what we saw in Ois Hey up until now. Okay, let's start. Let's give a little bit of a head start. I'm counting down. 16th line, something like that. In the middle of the line, it says Loch Ein Haya Mishkan Miatzei Shitim. Middle of the line, after a period, Yibba Bechina Shtus de Kedusha. Right, and what our question in Ois Gimel was, why is the Mishkan made of Atzei Shitim? We're getting there. Just a few weeks away of learning about the Mishkan. Lochen haya Mishkan mi Atzei Shitim dafka. Rebbe says, therefore the Mishkan was from Atzei Shitim, wood of Shtus. V'hainu halamayla min das, a level beyond intellect. Hamizbarer v'nasa min lamata min das, that is rectified and brought about by that which is below das. In other words, transforming the darkness of Elam Hazeh into the light of Mishkan. Right, and what does it mean, lamayla min das? I think the simplest expression of that is most people's relationship with their parents. You don't love your parents because you've come to the intellectual realization that you're worthy of your love. Right? You love your parents because of a much deeper connection that's completely super rational. And as a matter of fact, if chas v'shalom, v'chas v'shalom, v'chas v'shalom, there's a reason not to love a parent. As a matter of fact, there might even be a reason to not have anything to do with the parent if, God forbid, the parent is abusive, which unfortunately can happen in Eilam Hazeh, Gashmi. So if that's the case, it's very, very difficult to get that child to break away. Why? Well, reasonably, why would the child want to have anything to do with such a person? But it's not reasonable. That's the whole point. Right? It's not based on reason. It's Lamai Levina Das. So to our relationship with the Eibishter. Our relationship with the Eibishter is coming from a place far beyond intellect. It has to resonate in intellect. But Emunah is a power that's more powerful than intellect. And Emunah, that's what we learned in the Mimer. Emunah is what allows us to connect to a level of godliness that intellect can't understand. Why can't intellect understand it? Because intellect is limited. It can only understand certain things. And then the Eibishter is beyond that which intellect can understand. The Eibishter is not an idea. Right? So there are aspects of godly reality that can be understood in intellect, because there are ideas about godly light and different levels of godliness. That's true. But the Eibishter himself, Atzmusi Yisbarach, Leis Machshava Tvisa Beichlal, no thought can comprehend him. So how do we touch that place to go beyond intellect? What's that beyond intellect? Well, the Rebbe has not used the word Emunah once, but that's what it is. The source of it is your Emunah. Etzem and Neshama, which the Rebbe told us can't be disconnected from the Eibishter. That he told us in Ois Dalet. Right? When the Rebbe told us in Ois Gimel that Aveira is separated from the Eibishter, we learned in Ois Dalet that that's only the midos of the Nefesh Elokis, but not the Etzem of the Nefesh Elokis. Right? Which is actually, I think, a question on the test. If it's not whatever it is, a worksheet, whatever you want to call it. Right? If a test makes you nervous, call it a worksheet. Right? Okay. So taking Gashmias and turning it into a vehicle for the revelation of godliness, which is what the Mishkan is. And this is what it means, and this is the whole Mimer has been based on this statement. This Mimer has taught us how to do this, which is really quite astounding. Make for me a Mikdash, meaning involve yourself in those levels of Avodah that sensitize you to Elokus, right? Which simply would be what we learned in the second chapter, to be misbeinin useluki shagam and nefesh habahamis yochel lasigre, to contemplate godly things that also the nefesh habahamis can understand, which will bring about a change in your conscious reality, and godliness will be part of your conscious reality. And if that's the case, v'shechanti b'seicham, I'll dwell in them. Not in it, but in them. They should make from me mikdash, do those things necessary to sensitize themselves to the Eibishter, and I will dwell in them. In each and every one. So after all, the pasuk should say, make for me a mikdash and I'll dwell in it. No, it says I'll dwell in them. So on the level of Avodah, in the level of Pshat, it means I'll dwell amongst them. Okay, Beseder. In the Veda, what does it mean? Do those things necessary to sensitize yourself to Elokus. Bring your intellect to a place where it can appreciate Elokus. Bring that which is beyond intellect into intellect, which is what this is all about. That's why Chabad isn't about intellect. Chabad is about Emunah. Just where does your Emunah resonate? It has to resonate in your intellect, or else you have nothing to do with it. It's what you and I call a makif, which we certainly know what that is. Right? We've learned a lot about that in this Mimer. To bring it down into Panemius, that's the Aveda of Vasuli Mikdash, which we learned about in the Mimer. This comes through the Aveda of the person, through his Avedas of Bidurim, rectification, rectifying himself, which we learned about, and rectifying the physical world. Shapeil, what does he do? He causes lahafcha, to transform chashucha l'nahara, darkness to light. Vahainu, what does that mean? Lafeches elamata mina das doilam, to transform that which is below intellect in the world, from Welt, from the world. Why that's there, I don't know, but Shiem is elamayla mina das, that there should be from this lamayla mina das. So now the Rebbe brings all of this down to the most basic, fundamental expression imaginable: eating and sleeping. It's just amazing. After all we've learned in this Mimer, it all comes down to this. There are a number of things in a person, shu noyeg, that he does, v'oisakain, and acts that way. Why? Vaila azoy tut welt, because this is what the world does. That's what those words mean. Tut is the das, Welt is world. Azoi tut Welt. This is what the world does. This is just the way it is. Doesn't think about it. It's just this is what you do. Why? I don't know. It's what everybody does. But and these things, they're like a statue. It's impossible to move them from their place. Why? This is the way the world works. So if you ask your average French person when you eat dinner, he'll say 8 o'clock. You ask your average American, North American, he'll say 6 o'clock. Right? You'll ask your average American what he eats for dinner, so that's his biggest meal of the day. You ask your Israeli what he eats for dinner, dinner's a light meal. Lunch is the biggest meal of the day. Why? Zoitut Welt, that's what they do. It's just the way it is. Right? Anybody thought about this? Well, I don't know. I mean, actually making dinner the heaviest meal of the day is pretty stupid, actually, if you think about it, because you don't need that energy for anything except to watch TV. But I guess if watching TV and movies is the single most important thing, you want more energy for that, so you have to have your big dinner before that. I don't know. How French people fall asleep, I'm not sure, because they eat a big meal at 8 o'clock. Right? They do drink a lot of wine with the big meal, so that might help. But I don't like it's a crazy time to eat. Right? If you want to be fat, that's the time to do it. Right? Eat before you sleep, so then all those calories just sit there. I wouldn't say it was advice, it was an order. The best order I ever got from a doctor after going through a certain, but it doesn't matter, it's gory details of a medical situation. So I had lost about 10 kilos, and for me to lose 10 kilos, there's not much left. So I asked the doctor, well, how do I put on my 10 kilos that I lost in the last month? So he said, eat a bowl of ice cream every night before you go to sleep. So I said, is that an order? He said, yeah, that's an order. I said, wow, that's the coolest order I've ever had. Right? So I ate a bowl of ice cream. I had to stay, I couldn't be fleishik, right? I had to be milchik, right? Because par of ice cream is a bracha levatala. So milchik chocolate, as you would assume, right? After our many conversations, 3 types of chocolate. The ones we have when we finish a Mishnah, those 3. That was the chocolate. That was the actual.
I will miss those.
What?
I will miss those.
Yeah. Okay. I'll say you can. I'll let you know when it's happening. You guys can come visit. Right. So to eat ice cream every night. Why? Well, it just turns into weight. We don't work it off. Okay. What's interesting is it was sort of interesting. I put the weight back on in about a month, right? Because that was obviously my natural weight. So it just, body went back to that immediately. Right? And it didn't go above it. I mean, I kept eating ice cream every night just to see what would happen. Okay, so there's things we do just because that's the way the world does it. The Rabbi explains, ukemai, like, kaminyan in nimus, etiquette, v'doima, right? Fork on the left, knife on the right. Doesn't mean you should put the fork on the right and the knife on the left because of iskafia. It's just what people do, right? And you put the napkin under the fork if you're a civilized human being, right? You might put the soup spoon next to the knife, or you might put the soup spoon above the plate. It depends. I'm not sure who does what, but whatever they do, that's what they do. Why? It's just what they do. All such things in our lives, not how we set the table. We'll see what the Rebbe means. We have to transform to Kedusha. Meaning, not to do things because that's the way the world does it. To do things because that's the way God wants it. Times of eating and times of sleeping. In terms of the way the world works, they're set in time. Right? I mean, you don't call someone at 2 a.m. Why? Well, you assume he's asleep, which he should be, right? I mean, that's a perfectly reasonable time to be asleep. Right? Okay. It used to be, I don't know, I don't assume it's this way anymore, but it used to be when I grew up, My father used to actually turn off the phone at 6 o'clock because we would eat dinner every night at 6 o'clock, and he would turn off the phone so it wouldn't ring. But you knew not to call people between 6 and 7. They're probably eating dinner with their family because that's what everybody did every night. They ate dinner with their family, which I know is an absolutely absurd idea to actually sit with your family and talk to them. But I mean, that's what people used to do. At 6 o'clock, everybody was sitting and eating dinner with their family. That's just what people did every day. Right? Okay. So what would you know not to do? You wouldn't call them at that time. You wouldn't call them. For my father, Shalom used to turn off the phone at 6 o'clock. The phone didn't ring during dinner. Right? Not the phone in his pocket. The house phone. There wasn't a phone in his pocket. The house phone was off at 6 o'clock. Now, he was a doctor also, right? So, meaning theoretically a patient would have to get in touch with him. They'll get in touch with him in half an hour. Right? If it's really life and death, they shouldn't call him. They should call an ambulance, right? So, call a gavadim. Used to go crazy when cell phones would ring if we were eating dinner together. Later years, go crazy. Put that thing away. What drove him nuts. The idea that you start talking to someone else in the middle of a conversation at dinner. Okay. But times of eating and times of sleeping are set. No, that's not completely unreasonable. Relative to the way the world feels, meaning the way the world works, and this depends on the culture, right? V'gam also, when a person has to go to work, also set in time. People come to this, less now in the yeshiva because we don't live next to Geula. But it used to be when the yeshiva was next to Geula, one of the things that always surprised the guys was that stores in Geula weren't open at 9:30 in the morning. Why aren't they open at 9:30 in the morning? The guy running the store, what's he doing? He's probably learning then, right? He gets up in the morning, goes to mikveh, davens, sits and learns for a couple of hours, and then he opens up his store. Right? Well, how can the store not be open till 10 o'clock? Who says the store has to be open before 10 o'clock? I mean, what's more important? You should sit and learn or sell erasers to you. You need an eraser, right? It doesn't open up until 10, 9, 10, whatever. Well, Crownites also, stores tend to open later. Not the grocery stores, people need food, but the other stores, they open much later. Flams, I don't know when he gets there. It's 1 o'clock. Right? People get very upset at this. They were to think about it, they say, maybe there's reason to this madness, but it's l'mayla mina reason. That's the whole point. Right? So when a person's at work, when a person's sleeping, when a person's eating, that's all pretty predictable. Mikol makom, hine azmani meilu al pi haroiv, that means in the majority of situations, bilti nizozim u bilti nidochin. They're immovable and never pushed off. Klal ve'ikr. Right? I'm very careful. This is good. There's nothing wrong with this. I'm very, very careful to get into bed every night at 10:30. I need, X amount of sleep. Okay, perfectly reasonable, fine. But what? Now the Rebbe's going to say something that's very challenging. Uzmane akvir shel Torah tefillah, and the time of establishing learning Torah and tefillah was a little different for a guy in yeshiva, right? Because you've obviously got times when you learn Torah because you're learning Torah all day. The Rebbe's talking about someone who works for a living, right? What about their learning? They're davening. When's that? They don't necessarily, they might be pushed off and don't necessarily have a set time. When the person eats dinner, every night, same time. Now, obviously, you guys eat lunch every day at 2 o'clock because that's when lunch is. Okay, Beseders. Obviously, we're talking about a different situation. But what's immovable and what's movable? Well, generally, the way the world works, what's immovable? When I sleep, when I eat, and when I work. What's movable? When do you do Rambam? When do you do Rambam? Whenever I find a little time, I'll do Rambam. Right? Okay. Now, again, in yeshiva, these things are, but when do I daven Maariv? Okay, Shachris, what your average Jew in the world, when does he daven Shachris, and what determines when he davens Shachris? Right, when he has to get to work, that's when he daven Shacharis. Right? What should determine when he daven Shacharis? When he can get enough sleep to have some energy so he can get up, go to mikveh, learn some chassidus, and daven properly. That's what should determine when he daven Shacharis. Are there people for whom that determines? Yeah, absolutely. Are there people for whom that can't determine? Yeah, I mean, if you work for someone else and you have to be there at 8 o'clock, okay, so you're going to have to daven at 6. The Seder, okay, so if you daven at 6, so then what do? I guess you go to sleep earlier. Who can go to sleep at 9? Well, okay, if you need your 8 hours, whatever it is, right? Some people need that. Okay, so then you have to go to sleep at 9, right? Well, no one goes to sleep at 9. Well, but if you have to get up and be ready to say Haidu at 6, and that means you have to have gone to mikveh and learned chassidus before, so I guess you go to sleep earlier, right? Who says you have to go to sleep at 11? I don't know. Well, how can you go to sleep before you watch the 11 o'clock news? Which doesn't exist anymore because it's all in your phone. But whatever, right? I have to see, I'm dating myself. I have to see Carson's monologue. That's 11:30. Right? The doctor knows what I'm talking about. Okay. Johnny Carson's dead for half of your life, but okay, Beseder, right? Many people used to stay up until 11:45 just to see that, right? And then they'd go to bed, right? Okay. He came on at 11:30 at night. Why? Well, because the news was 11. Why? I don't know. The news was at 6 or 6:30. NBC and ABC were 6 o'clock. Walter Cronkite on CBS was 6:30. Why? Because everybody's eating dinner at that time and they'll watch it. Major evening news in America. ABC and NBC were 6 o'clock. Walter Cronkite was 6:30. Those are the only 3 stations you could get. There was nothing else, right? That's when everybody watched the news, right? Why? I don't know. It's just the way it was. What could you do? That's actually what he used to say. That's the way it is. Okay, things that are immovable. What should be immovable? When you learn Chassidus before davening, right? When you learn your Rambam, when you learn the Gemara that you've set aside to learn because as a balabas you have to finish a Masechta every year, right? So when do you do that? When you have a chavrusa in shul, usually out of the house, right? Which is hard to do because you just came home, but you're going to have to leave and go to shul and sit and learn for an hour. And your wife's going to also have to put up with that, which is a pain in the neck because she probably likes you and that's why she married you. And when you come home, she'd like to see you. Okay, you see each other and then you help her put the kids to sleep and then you go sit and learn for an hour. Where? Maybe in the house, but it's probably better to go somewhere else. I mean, you go into shuls and from neighborhoods, what do you see? Bunch of people, balabatim, sitting there learning with their chavrusa at 9 o'clock at night, 9 to 10 every night. They sit and learn. Where can you find them? 9 to 10, chavrusa. You want to know what they're doing 9 to 10? You know. What are they doing at 6 o'clock? Unknown. Not so clear. They eating? Maybe. Are they bathing the kids? Maybe. It depends. Depends on that. Probably bathing the kids because the kids are probably going to go to sleep at 7. So by 6 o'clock, you want to have the kids fed and they already put them in the bath and then they're hanging around and jumping around and, in their pajamas for a while and then, okay, let's go to sleep. Right? So about 6:30, with your own children, which will be a long time, I understand. But, when do I know not to call my children? 6:30. Useless time to call my children. Why? Well, they're busy. What are they busy doing? Putting their kids to sleep. Right? Okay, that's a holy thing to do. Right? It's just, no, that's what they're doing. Okay? So there's certain things that the world calls immovable, but we don't. Those things are movable. What's immovable? When you learn, when you daven, when you have time for your family. Rabbi wants you to spend up to half an hour a day discussing your children's education with your wife. When do you do that? Right? You say, we'll just get it done when we have time. Well, you won't have time. Right? When do you do it? What time do you set aside to do that? When you eat, who cares? When do you talk about your children's education? Maybe over dinner. Fine, no problem. But not when you're eating with the kids. right? Because when you're eating with the kids, you're supposed to be involved in your children's education. You're supposed to be educating them at that particular point to say please and thank you and not throw food at each other, right? So it's like, that's part of the education, right? Please and thank you. Where do they learn that? From you at the dinner table. That's where they learn it. Also other parts of the day, but when he thinks about it, is there any sense and any wisdom in this? That those things that are necessary but not of absolute importance are set in time, and those things that are absolutely necessary and of absolute importance, and the whole purpose as to why I came into Elam Hazeh, those things are happenstance. They happen whenever they can. Demio Yodea Ite Zmane. I get a little heavy, but it has to be said. Who knows his time? Ukediisa b'medrash Rabbah, meaning how much time you have down here. Ein Adam Sholet Leimer. A person doesn't have control to say, so to speak, to the Eibishter or to himself, Hamtinu li, wait for me, Ad she'eseh cheshbenesai, until I do my cheshbenes, until I take care of all of my material matters. Right? V'ad she'etztava labesi, until I take care of my family. Meaning, Eibishter, you want me to, daven seriously and learn, okay, wait until I finished supporting my family. I'm financially secure, and after I'm financially secure, so then maybe I'll have some time for you. How can he put his whole soul al davar she'ein bei mamish klal, on something that has no absolute reality? It's important, but it's not of absolute importance. Vala ikar, and on the most important thing, which was the purpose of the descent of his soul below, who shecheach lagamre, might completely forget. Right? So why are we here? Learn, daven, the mitzvahs, make a deal b'tachtenim. Okay, later on in life, why are you here? To make sure your children grow up to be happy, healthy, ehrliche Yidden, that they grow up enjoying their relationship with God. It takes a lot of work, right? Okay. So if you're so busy with your gross national product that you don't have time for them, so I understand, what's that about? What am I doing? They're so much more important than that. That doesn't mean I don't make a living because, I'm making a living for them. All right, what they need is a new pair of pants. What they need is a father. They need a father with them, bring with them, talk to them, play with them, enjoy them. They can enjoy him. And a mother, obviously. But you're not going to be the mother. You're going to be the father. Right? So that father, if he's so tired from his work, which he, it might be that's, the Eibishter makes life, for some people more difficult, some people less difficult. Okay, he has to work so hard to make a living that he has no keiches for his children. Okay, so he's going to have to figure out how to solve that issue. He's got to solve that issue more than anything. That doesn't mean he quits his job. He has to make a living. He has no choice. It's God's fault, but we all have to figure out how to make a living. Okay, but he also has to have energy for his kids. Right? And that's his ikar energy. Right? What you do at work, okay, beseder. That's called working of your hands. When do you work with your head and your heart? When you daven, when you learn, and when you deal with your wife and your children. That's your head and your heart. That's when the real keiches that the Eibishter gave you have to be. Making a living, you're going to have to use your head to make a living, right? I mean, even if you're what's called working with your hands, you're still using your head because the carpenter knows how to do things that you and I don't know how to do. He learned how to do it with his head. Okay, beseder. But that's yachasit yegia kapecho kiseichel. David HaMelech says the work of your hands that's such that you should eat. Right? That's why Jewish education is the way Jewish education is. What don't we teach our children? A trade. Meaning, we might teach them a trade later, but what don't we teach our children? How to make a living. People get very upset at us. All these religious people. Why don't you teach your child how to make a living? How to teach a child how to be a godly person. It's much more important than making a living. Now, he's got to make a living, but he'll figure that out, especially if he's a healthy, godly person. He'll figure that out. If he's a healthy person, he'll figure out how to do it. He may do a better job, a worse job, a little more luck, a little less luck, whatever, however it works. It's not really luck, it's all the Eibishter, but they'll figure it out. But what's most important? He should be an Erlich. Right? If you bring up your child so he's an independent person who has a vital and interesting relationship with the Eibishter and with his wife and with his children and with his community, you've done an amazing job. Kol hakavod. Good job. And he doesn't need you. If he needs you, you did a crummy job. And if he's independent of you, you did a good job. Doesn't mean he doesn't like you and won't call you up for questions and discuss things with you. Of course he will. Right? But does he need you? No. Then you did a good job. Good. That's what life is really all about. Right? And that's Shtus de Kedusha. Right? The Shtus de Welt is that the Zoitut Welt. This is how the world works. How can I buck how the world works? This is the way it works. Don't have to work that way. Right? That's to work the way you want it to work. Meaning, I had this conversation with my son at about 3:30 in the morning, Yud Shvat. Got back from a Farbrengen. I was sleeping in his house. Well, not exactly sleeping. Napping in his house. So he waited up for me. Just sweet. He fell asleep on the couch. And then when I came in, we sat and schmoozed a little. So he had just also Farbrengt. And he said something really interesting about Shtus de Kedusha. This part of Bosi Legani. He said, people admire people with principles. People admire people with principles. Right? So if you're sitting with someone and they say, they look at their watch. Oh, I have to go. This is my time to exercise. I go exercise now. Right? And he left a bunch of people sitting and having a really good time schmoozing. He goes to exercise. He'll probably say, wow, he's a serious guy. Look at that. Okay. If he were to be sitting there and he said, oh, I have to go learn Rambam, you'd probably say, well, Rambam. I mean, you can't learn Rambam later, I understand. Right? Which of those two reactions is normal and which of those two reactions is weird? It's pretty weird to say, oh, he's got to go exercise. Oh, that's really important. He's got to go. No, it is important to exercise. I mean, right? Nishmart and modla nafsho sechem, a person will turn it into religion. Right, okay. Say it's important, you should exercise, no doubt about it. Should the guy go? Well, why not? I understand. If he exercises every day at whatever, 8:30 at night, so let him eat. Then he should go. He's a principled person. But it should be the same way with his Rambam. It should be the same way with learning that page of Gemara that he learns every day, so he'll do what the Rebbe asks him to do, which is to finish a Masechta every single year. Right? And of the two, which should get pushed off? The exercising, not the Rambam and the learning. Which might, we don't want to say. Right? We know, because we all have the same thing called the Nefesh HaBahamis, right? Okay. Right? And of course, I'll convince myself when I do the exercise that the exercise will have more energy so I can learn more Torah, but I'll push off the Torah in order to exercise. Well, maybe I should push off the exercise in order to learn Torah. I mean, there's something unusual happening that day and I have to pick one or the other. Well, maybe it should be the exercise that goes and not the Rambam. I'll do 6 prakim tomorrow. No, do 50 push-ups tomorrow. Do 3 today and 3 tomorrow. Right? No, but you don't understand. It doesn't work the same. And you do understand the Rambam does work the same, or doesn't it? You tell me. You know? You know about learning Torah, exactly how it works and how it affects your neshama and how it affects the world, so that you know that it's not a big deal if I don't do it today, I'll do double tomorrow. You know that? You know that's the way it works? I don't. Right? With push-ups, no problem, because some guy with a bunch of muscles can go on YouTube and tell you that, oh, I have to do it every day religiously, and if you don't do it, if you miss a day, I'll explain the whole thing to you. Okay. Well, if you listen carefully to Lubavitcher Rebbe and Sichas, he's not going to look like that guy, and he's not going to make such a big show of himself. But he'll explain to you that learning Torah every day is extremely important and you can't miss it. And he'll tell you that if you're learning Rambam and you miss, okay, 1 sec, okay, got me. If you're learning Rambam and you miss a day, so what do you do? If you miss a day in Rambam, what do? You do one parak a day. And let's say today was parak Aleph and tomorrow's parak Beis. Tomorrow, when you start learning, what do you do? What? Yeah, okay, but what do you do first? Rabbi says clearly, Beis. Why? The whole purpose of learning Rambam is not only to learn Rambam, which you're learning, it's also to learn Rambam with the rest of the Jewish people. And what are the rest of the Jewish people learning that day? Beis. So what do you do first? Learn Beis. Then find some time to learn Aleph, but don't learn Aleph first. Say, but I'm not going to understand Beis as well if I didn't do Aleph. That's the way it goes. That's why you should have learned Aleph yesterday, isn't it? That's the way it goes. But what's the Rebbe want? He wants you to learn Torah, not just learn Torah. He wants you to learn Rambam with the rest of the Jewish people. That's by the way, if you listen to the Sichos, the Rebbe, when he talked about learning Rambam, when he first instituted Rambam. So it was all about Am Yisrael learning all of the Torah together. That was Rambam. Okay, so if I'm learning a different chapter every day because I'm catching up, so then I'm not learning together. So then I missed. But don't you understand that if I don't do my X reps today, then I can't do my reps tomorrow? Tell your reps to Gay Fife and make sure you learn Rambam. Then go do your reps, no problem. You know?
So I think I understand. I'll admit my bias. Like I love my exercise.
Love your exercise.
But I'm just saying, like in a situation where push comes to shove and you have to choose between the two, doesn't the Rambam himself say that you need to sweat? You need to bring yourself to a sweat like once a day.
I'll use the Rambam to tell me I don't have to learn Torah.
Yeah.
No problem. I can use. Yep, that's good. I'm the Rambam. You tell me why I'm not learning Torah today. The Rambam told me not to learn Torah today. Go learn Hilchos Talmud Torah and see what the Rambam says about learning Torah. Okay. Yes, the Rambam says you're supposed to be healthy. Right, so I said it, as a matter of fact. Okay. Of the two, why were you sent here? Which is the means and which is the end? So what am I doing? Right? It's like a person who goes to work all day and never sees his children because why aren't I supposed to support my children? Doesn't the Torah say I'm supposed to support my children? Of course the Torah says I'm supposed to support my children at the expense of never seeing them. Does it say that anywhere? Right? There are people who sacrifice their relationship with their children, with their wife, with everything else in life other than their tennis game in order to make a living. It's absolutely absurd. Why do you have to make a living? So you can have a life. So why are you sacrificing your life to make a living? The only reason you need a living is to have a life. So what are you doing? Right? Okay, which is why, honestly, I mean, now I'll be really annoying. That's why people should sit and spend 2, 3, 4 years in yeshiva. Why? So their life will be a deeper, more sophisticated and holy life, because they'll be really well versed in what's really important. Right? As opposed to be, sort of have a basic idea of what it's all about. Right? Why should I be more sophisticated in Goyishkeit than in Yiddishkeit? We're all fairly sophisticated in Goyishkeit, right? So why should I be more sophisticated in that than in Yiddishkeit? Yeah, I want to be sophisticated in Yiddishkeit. Okay, it took me time to get sophisticated in Goyishkeit. I wasn't thinking about it that way, but why was I doing it? Azoi tut vel. This is how the world works. This is what you do. Just doing what everybody does. Right? Without thinking about it. Oh, that's exactly what the Rebbe's talking about. What shtus the Gedusha? Turn that upside down. But I can't. Are you kidding? If I don't do this and this and this and this, I won't get this and this and this and this, and then I'll miss out on this and this and this and this. First of all, who knows? Second of all, what's life really all about? What am I supposed to be doing? Why am I here? That's what the Rebbe said. Why are we here? We're here to bring about a dir b'tachtonim. There's all this other stuff that we have to do in order to somehow manage that. Okay, but I can get stuck in the means and forget the end. Vala Iker, 6 lines up again. Masha Haisa Kavone b'Yeridus Nishmasa Lamatu Shecheach Lagarma. This is the Frierdiker Rebbe. He's doing it again. He's ripping our kishkas out. No. Where's that coming from? V'urak mitzad ruach shtus. That's the ruach shtus. Shemachas alemis, that covers up the truth. Why are we here? Hard to remember. right? Might be that I think I'm here because, like, if I exercise enough, I know someone who exercises constantly. They're retired. They exercise constantly. Why? So they can eat whatever they want. They're constantly exercising, so they can keep weight off. Right? So they're busy exercising and they eat whatever they want. The pastries and whatever. They like that sort of stuff, but they don't want to be fat. Excuse the word, that's a bad word, fat. They don't want to be thin challenged, right? but so they exercise, they walk and they run and they. Now they don't have a lot else to do, right? So it's not so terrible, but it's funny. Then they'll come back from the exercise and they'll eat a Danish. Right? Right? I've seen this person in action. I'm related to them, not by blood, but fine. And it's very interesting. Great person, wonderful person, but busy all the time, running and doing and walking and probably never having a normal, square, healthy meal, ever. But they're not fat. Right, so I should wait until I take care of everything, and then maybe then I'll have time when I retire. God, I'm going to sit and learn. Right, so v'urak mitzad ruach shtus shemachas alem, it covers up the truth. V'hine zeis tiavedase lafech shtus zed elam. What's our aveda? To transform the shtus of the world. V'yamed al nafshe, to stand strong in his soul. V'yikve lo itim l'Torah, and set aside times to learning Torah. What should be the case if we're a balabas? Again, in yeshiva, it's easy. When we leave yeshiva, what should everybody know? He doesn't answer his phone from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. He's learning. Just know that. Right? Do you answer your phone when you're in a business meeting with your boss? Right? Your friend calls, oh, hi, how you doing? Hold on just 1 second. Hi, how you doing? What's up? Oh, 8? We've got tickets at 8? Oh, good. Okay, I'll meet you 7:30. No, maybe 7:15. We'll go get some beers first. Yeah? Okay, good. Good. And your boss is sitting there listening. What's this guy wasting my time for? Right? So what do you do when you walk into a meeting with your boss with these? You turn your phone off, right? You don't have your phone on when you're walking into a meeting with your boss. Okay, you're walking into your meeting with a boss. It's called Shachris at 9 o'clock. What do? You turn your phone off. Right? Start playing Spider Solitaire or something. Right? That makes any sense? Right? No. Okay, Beseder, but mitzad, the way the world looks at things, is that an unusual thing to do? No one would say anything about it. Right? Mapitom. Right? But if you were to do the same thing flipped, someone would call you like, whoa, he's really like wacko frum, huh? This guy's like a little off he's like, it's not normal, this guy. You should chill a little, no? Yeah. Looking at a phone in the middle of a conversation with God is normal, but other things are considered weird. V'yamed al nafshe v'yikve la'itim l'Torah v'az hine. Then what? If we do this, what happens? V'shachanti b'seicha. Now look what the Rebbe says. All of this actually pays dividends. Dividends in reality, which we don't have to worry about, but also dividends in Elam Hazeh that we don't have to worry about. We're not doing it for this, but this is what happens, the Rebbe says. It's interesting. Right now, working on we're involved in a project doing 7-minute videos regarding different letters of the Rebbe. And the letters that we're working on right now are all about Emunah and Bitochen. It's so interesting. Every single letter, the Rebbe says the same thing. Right? There's 2 things going on in the letter. Believe in God and be more careful about mitzvahs, and everything will work out. Right? Sooner or later, the Rebbe says, not necessarily right away, but everything that's the Rebbe's message to anybody who writes him with trouble. And the Rebbe, and it's clear that in the context of the Rebbe, the letters, it's always very, very clear that the Rebbe is very sympathetic of their pain, mentions it, right? But then says this is the way to deal with it. Emunah, and more work on your amuna, work on becoming a person more conscious of elokus in their life, and be more serious about Torah and mitzvahs. Things will work out. Does that mean everything's going to change? Lav dafka. How does it often work out? The person is able to deal with difficulties in a much more sophisticated and simchadik way. Right? Personally, there's no question that in my life, the most simchadik people I've ever met in my life are always the most chassidish people I've met in my life. Do they have the easiest lives? No. Are they besimcha? Yes. Because they're living elokus. How do you live elokus? Shtus de kedusha. You can't live elokus if you don't work at it. That's what this whole mimer was about. The Frierdiker Rebbe is the real thing. You can imagine how the Frierdiker Rebbe is our Rebbe's Rebbe. Can you imagine such a thing? I mean, it's just absolutely astonishing. Va'az hinei v'shechanti b'seichem. Yamad el nafshe, set aside times for Torah, and then I'll dwell in them. Sheya'ir loy gilui or eloki b'nafshe. What does the Rebbe say? It'll shine in them, a revelation of godly light in their soul. They'll experience godliness in their life. But I have to push aside a bunch of stuff to let the godliness through. Right? The clouds have to disappear for me to see the sun. Right? You want to say Kiddush Levana, so if there's clouds, you can't see the moon. You have to move the clouds aside. So if you're tricky, you can do that with a handkerchief, but most of us can't. V'zeu, and this is, now the Rebbe is getting back to what we saw in the very first chapter. Kadiskafir Sitrach, right? Sort of saw that before. When you subdue the Sitrach, when you don't let it, and what does that mean? Shal Yadesha Payil Lafech, that a person works, Payil, which means the work and also cause. Lafech, to transform, is a shtus the Nefesh Abamis. The folly of the Nefesh Abamis. What the Nefesh Abamis is going to make me think is truth. Azoy tut velt. The Nefesh Abamis is always going to go along with what the world says truth is. That's the nature. Now, without working hard, I can get my Nefesh Abamis to realize that that's not true. That's why we're sitting and learning what we're learning, to get our Nefesh Abamis to realize that that's not true. But the Nefesh Abamis beside itself is just always going to go along. Oh, yeah, that's what you do. We're in France, 8 o'clock dinner, fine. Good, makes sense. The only minion for Marv in town is at 8 o'clock. I have to eat dinner. Okay. That's sort of shtus, right? Shtus to Kedusha is, I won't eat dinner with everybody else. All right, well, I'll miss the restaurant, right? I'll have a bowl of cereal for dinner. How can I have a bowl of cereal for dinner? No one has a bowl of cereal for dinner. Why can't you have a bowl of cereal for dinner? What happened? Especially if you had a good lunch. Right? I'm going to tell you one story when we finish, and then we're done. And a person's focus on worldly matters. And what does a person have to do? Transform that Kedusha, the holiness, B'kiyam Torah mitzvahs, in the performance of Torah mitzvahs. What's the person principled about? Torah mitzvahs. What else happens? All sorts of other things happen in their life. But what do they make sure never, ever doesn't happen? Shachris, Mincha, Maariv, Rambam, learning a page of Gemara, Chassidus, far davening. Those things that have to be. Taking some time to be with helping other people. Some time during the week where you involve yourself in helping other people. Not just worrying about your own inyanim, worrying about other people's inyanim. As a stalakik with the kuchabricha b'cholamim, then it goes out the glory of the Eibusher that exists in all the worlds equally. Shemer mizgala or seviv kolamim. Right, the beginning of the mimer comes right back to the end. First chapter comes right back to the last line. Kitzer yivar shtus v'atay l'mayla mitam v'das kedusha. Explains how shtus and l'mayla mitam v'das of kedusha, turning beyond intellect as opposed to below. Ukemei, like what? What's that similar to? Havshata saher geshaseich v'amidas based on nevuah, like the Nevi'im. In order to reach that state of nevuah, they had to transcend their own midas and their own seichel to be a kli for Kadosh Baruch Hu's intellect, so to speak. Hamishkan mi'atzei shitim, and the Mishkan is made from atzei shitim. What's that? How do you make a mikdash? How do we bring Mashiach? Ishafcha the shtus to lumazeh, by transforming the shtus of the other side, the shtus to kedusha. In this way, be afraid of every single person. Just a quick story that I remember hearing on Yud Shvat many years ago in 770 for bringing for all the Bachrim who Yud Shvat, lots and lots and lots and lots and lots of Bachrim come to 770 for bring. So there was, and they do it's always a Farbring in the afternoon, just, Farbring, and a bunch of people speak. So Gershi Avtson, Rosh Yeshiva in Cincinnati, was speaking. This is probably 15 years ago. He was much younger then. He was very young Rosh Yeshiva in those days. Very good yeshiva. Yeshiva Ketana, yeshiva for boys 13, 14, 15, 16. In Cincinnati, Ohio. So he told a story about his father. When his father was a little boy, okay? So there's 3 generations. The guy telling the story about his father and his grandfather. So his grandfather brought his father to 770 when his father was a little boy. They were from Detroit. The grandfather had 16 children. Famous guy, Meir Avtson, very special Jew. So Meir Avtson brought one of his sons, maybe more than one, but the one that Gershi is telling the story about is his father. So if you've ever heard of the rap, there's a yeshiva here in Yerushalayim called the rap. It's Rabbi Avtson's program. So that's one of the sons. That's Gershi's uncle. It's one of the 16. So I think there's 16, 17. So Meir Avtson brought his son to 770. So the kid was 10, 8. So he was with his father in 770. He told his father he wanted to go home to eat lunch. So his father said, fine, go home to eat lunch. Do you know the way? Because Grand Heights was much more dangerous in those days than it is now. Now it's getting dangerous again. But it was much more dangerous, and you couldn't go past Eastern Parkway. You couldn't go on the other side of Eastern Parkway. Now there's Jews living there, but in those days you couldn't walk over there. So, I had to make sure that your kid knew where to go. So he said, yeah, he knows the way, fine. So he went out 7th Street, took a left on Eastern Parkway, which was the right way to go. And he was walking along Eastern Parkway, and as he was walking along Eastern Parkway away from 770, the Rebbe was walking towards 770 on Eastern Parkway. So this little kid saw the Rebbe and then moved over to the side. He didn't want to walk into the Rebbe on the street, didn't know what to say, so he moved over and sort of hid behind a bush, waiting for the Rebbe to pass. So the Rebbe came and went around the bush and said, hello, how are you? What's your name? Where are you from? What are you doing? He knew where he's from. As soon as he heard Abson, he knew where he was from. So the Rebbe said, what do you do? So, where have you been? So he said, I've been in 770 with my father. Where are you going? He said, I'm going home to eat lunch. So he said, will you do me a favor? I'll do the Rebbe a favor. You go back into 770 and learn for 5 more minutes and then go home and eat lunch. Will you do that? It's called Shtus de Kedusha. Well, the Rebbe didn't say that to him, but that's Shtus de Kedusha. But what does it make you learn afterwards? No. Right now. You go. So he walked back into 770 and learned. Now, he doesn't tell this part of the story, but I can just imagine his father. This little kid comes back and he said, what are you doing? I thought you went to lunch. Well, I met the Rebbe on the way and he told me I should come back in for 5. So the father said, come on, stop dreaming, stop making up stories. But I mean, that's evidently what happened to his father when he was a little boy. So what's that all about? That's Shtus de Kedusha. What the Rebbe said? Take 5 more minutes and go learn now. Is there could you learn even maybe better after lunch than now? Who knows? That's a different cheshbon. Right now, what could you do? Don't eat for 5 more minutes. What can you do here in yeshiva? Cole, before you leave, listen. It's Kedai. Once a month to come to Chassidus, you might as well listen to it till the very end, right? I don't think it's funny, right? It is what it is, right? So, what can you do in yeshiva? If there's food. If there's no food, don't do it. But if there's food, after mincha, sit down, learn a Mishnah, learn 3 lines of Tanya, say over another kapitel Tehillim, do something for 3 minutes after mincha, instead of rushing out after the last kaddish, right, and get it. No. If there's no food, don't do it. If there's going to be food, if you get there 3 minutes later, sit down and learn for 3 minutes. Shtus de Kedusha. What's more important? Yeah, you just spent 3 hours, 4 hours learning. Besides, okay, God knows that. Don't worry. Right? 3 more minutes. What was this little kid doing in 770? He must have been doing something, right? And the Rebbe said, go back for 5 more minutes. Right? Breakfast, you might miss breakfast if you do that after Shabbos. I mean, no, the breakfast is different than lunch. Right? If you miss breakfast, don't do it. Go. But if there still be food, so say 5 more minutes. What's going to happen? Say an extra chapter of Tehillim. Right? Say an extra chapter of Tehillim after you finish Tehillim for the goodness for all the Jewish people in all of the world. Such a terrible thing to do. Right? Like something's going to happen. No, but what's a Zoytut Welt? I say the Tehillim I'm supposed to say. I'm supposed to say, the fill, and we didn't say Tachlin, so I said Chaf, and I said the Rebbe's kapitel and my kapitel and the daily Tehillim. Good. So in this world, a Zoytut Welt, that's what the world does. So that's what I do. No, I know. What's wrong with one more chapter? What'll happen? Right? Okay. And that way, we change our lives. Those little things. Because we change our focus. What are we really interested in? What are we really all about? What matters? Right? Are we learning to get the lunch? Or are we eating lunch in order to learn? Right? Like the Yom with Rebbe and Rivka. Right? That we just learned. And Tzemach Tzedek told her to eat before davening. Okay. So we'll start a new Maimer tomorrow. Please, I'm going to make copies of that anyway, but you have these questions. Please answer them. The last time I gave them out to students in this yeshiva, I didn't get one back. Yeah, it was rather disappointing.